The night began like any other night on the quiet human colony of Arden 5, a place where people slept early and lights faded softly across the dusty streets. But everything changed when a deep roar echoed from the alien district on the far ridge. Liam, a simple human mechanic, wiped grease from his hands and stepped outside, wondering if a storm was coming yet. What he saw froze his breath and locked his legs in shock. The alien orphan tower stood wrapped in fire, glowing like a dying sun in the middle of the sleeping town. Screams cut through the air, sharp and thin and terrified, the kind of screams that told a person someone was trapped inside with no hope to escape flames. Climbed the windows like living creatures swallowing wood metal and every weak part of the building and people from the alien. Settlement ran in panic, shouting to each other with no plan to save anyone. Liam heard one voice rise above the chaos, a small voice, a desperate cry for help so faint it felt like it could disappear any moment. It came from deep inside the building, a place already covered in smoke and burning beams. Without thinking, Liam ran toward the fire. Someone grabbed his arm, yelling that the child inside was worthless, that she belonged to no family, that their empire had already rejected her, that she was nothing but a burden. But Liam pulled his arm free, his eyes locked on the flames, because to him, a child crying in fear was never worthless. He covered his mouth with his sleeve and stepped through the broken doorway. Heat blasted his skin like an open furnace smoke. Pressed against his lungs like a heavy rock, he dropped to his knees, crawling through thick darkness, guided only by the tiny voice whispering for help. Inside the orphan tower, the hallway had collapsed, beams burning bright and hot like suns blocking the path ahead. But Liam forced himself under fallen metal and shattered glass, ignoring sharp cuts on his arms and the scorch on his cheek. All he cared about was reaching the voice before it faded. He called out, asking the child to keep speaking to guide him, but the voice grew weaker, turning into broken coughs and scared sobs. Liam pushed harder, crawling faster, ignoring the sting in his throat and the blur in his eyes, until he reached a small storage room with one corner still untouched by fire. There he found her, a tiny alien girl curled beneath a half-collapsed steel beam, her skin pale blue covered in ash. Her small hands trembling as she tried to breathe, her eyes wide with fear as she looked at the human who had come for her when her own people had run away. The beam pinning her leg was heavy, nearly impossible for one man to lift. But Liam braced himself and forced his body against it. Muscles shaking, sweat dripping, mixing with soot. Every second mattered, because the room was beginning to crack with heat and the ceiling groaned like it was about to fall. With a desperate shout, he lifted the beam high enough to pull the girl free. She whimpered but reached for him, trusting him without question, and Liam carried her in too, his arms holding her tight as he crawled back the way he came, through waves of heat and clouds of choking smoke. Half the building collapsed behind them, sending sparks and burning debris rolling toward them like a hungry storm. Liam shielded the girl with his own body, pushing forward step by step until he burst through the doorway into fresh air, just as the orphan tower fell with a thunderous crash, shaking the ground beneath their feet. People gasped when they saw him holding the small alien girl in his arms. She clung to him, her fingers gripping his shirt as if he was the only solid thing left in her world. Her voice weak as she whispered a question that made the entire crowd go silent. She asked why he saved her when her own people said she had no value. Liam looked down at her ash-covered face and answered in a quiet, steady voice that she mattered because every child mattered, and no fire or empire could change that truth. What Liam did not know was that soldiers from her empire had watched the rescue through surveillance drones and had sent the footage directly to their emperor, who stared in disbelief, trying to understand why any human would walk into fire for a child his empire had thrown away. As dawn approached, lights appeared in the sky, strange shimmering lights from massive ships descending in silence, and the people of Arden 5 stood frozen, wondering if the rescue of one small girl had awakened something far bigger than they could ever imagine. The morning after the fire felt strangely heavy, as if the sky itself watched the small human colony with silent eyes. Liam sat beside the alien girl he had rescued, her fragile body wrapped in a clean blanket while she rested on a cot inside his workshop. Her breathing was slow and unsteady, but at least she was alive for Liam. That was enough. But far beyond the colony, the ripple of his action had already traveled through space like a shockwave. Alien officials arrived before sunrise, their footsteps stiff and cold as they entered the workshop. Without asking permission, they stood tall in uniforms of dark silver, each face unreadable as they stared at the small girl lying behind Liam. Their leader, a narrow-eyed man with skin like obsidian, spoke with a voice that carried no warmth. "Return the child to us." Liam stepped between them and the girl, refusing to move aside. He asked why they abandoned her in the first place, why she was left in a burning building with no help, no protection. The officials exchanged quick glances, surprised by the human's bold tone. One of them answered that the child held no position in their empire, that she carried no family name, no value, no future. A child like her was not meant to be saved. Liam felt anger rising in his chest like a new kind of fire. He told them that value was not decided by an empire, that no child deserved to die alone. The girl woke weakly during the argument, her eyes glowing faintly in fear and confusion. She saw the officials and immediately hid behind Liam, gripping his shirt with trembling fingers. That tiny act of trust made the officials hesitate. They had never seen a child from their own species cling to a human for safety. It was unheard of, shocking, unnatural to them. The officials retreated to make a report, but their decision shook the foundation of their empire. They sent a message to the emperor himself, showing the footage of Liam carrying the girl out of the collapsing tower. The emperor was a ruthless man, known for his cold logic and control. But when he watched the human protect a rejected child, his face twisted with something unfamiliar: confusion, disbelief, maybe even fear. Why would a human act with such selfless courage? Why did he risk his life when the empire had already deemed the girl worthless? What did Earth gain from such a gesture? What was humanity planning across the galaxy? Other empires began reviewing the same footage taken from dozens of perspectives. Diplomats, scientists, commanders all watched the human running through fire to protect a child no one else wanted. They analyzed every movement, every decision, every heartbeat recorded on the drone feeds. One conclusion spread like wildfire: humans were unpredictable. Humans protected the weak, even when there was no advantage. Humans might become a threat because beings who act from compassion cannot be controlled. That idea terrified rulers who depended on fear to maintain their power. Back in the colony, Naira, the alien girl, sat quietly beside Liam while he repaired a broken solar engine. She watched him with large, bright eyes, full of questions. Why did he help her? Why did he not let her die like everyone else expected? Liam answered gently, telling her he saved her because she needed someone, because no child deserves to be left behind. Naira lowered her head, puzzled by his words, as if they were from another world. To her, kindness was something mythical, something told in stories but rarely seen. While Liam repaired engines and comforted the girl, powerful ships from multiple empires moved into position across nearby sectors. Commanders gave quiet orders to observe the human colony. Not to attack, not yet. They wanted to test Earth. They wanted to understand the motives of a species that ran into flames for a forgotten child. In secret, a high council of several empires held a meeting to discuss the unfolding crisis. Some feared humans, some admired them. Some wanted to use this moment to rewrite the balance of the galaxy, but one voice in the council chamber spoke with absolute command. Test the human, push him, make him reveal his true nature. The order spread to intelligence groups and undercover agents. They prepared traps, scans, diversions, and psychological pressure. They wanted to see if Liam's rescue was an accident, or if humans truly lived by protecting the helpless. That night, as Liam prepared a place for Naira to sleep safely, a silent signal flashed across the alien network. Agents were already on their way to the colony. The test had begun. Night returned to the colony. With a strange tension drifting through the streets like a silent mist, Liam felt something was wrong, though no one had said. Anything and no alarm had sounded. Naira stayed close to him all evening, her small hand always clutching his shirt as if she feared he would vanish the moment she blinked. Her eyes followed every sound outside the workshop door. She did not know why she felt danger, but her instincts whispered that someone was coming. The Council of Empires had ordered a test, a secret trial, to measure the heart of the human who saved a worthless child they sent. For covert agents trained to observe and provoke, their orders were simple. Take the girl from the human. See how far he would go to protect her, record his reaction, leave without killing anyone. But the Council underestimated how fear works in the real world. They underestimated how loyalty grows in the heart of a child. And they underestimated the strength of a human who refuses to abandon someone who needs him. The agents approached the workshop in complete silence, stepping across the dark paths with careful movements. Their shadows slid across the walls like predators, searching for prey. Inside, Naira froze, her entire body stiffening as if she sensed something beyond human hearing. Liam noticed her fear and knelt down, asking what was wrong. Naira whispered that something bad was outside, that something was watching them. Liam stood and reached for a tool iron, heavy, sturdy, the closest thing he had to a weapon. The door creaked before he could even move. 4 masked figures stepped into the workshop, their eyes glowing behind glass helmets. They spoke with calm, robotic voices, telling Liam to stand aside, telling him the girl did not belong to him, telling him they were reclaiming her. Naira backed away until she hit the wall, shaking visibly. Liam stepped forward, blocking their line of sight. He told them the girl was unsafe with them. He told them she was recovering. He told them no one was. Taking her tonight, the agents recorded every movement. They expected Liam to surrender. They expected him to show fear. They expected the humans to value their own life first. Instead, they watched a mechanic with no armor and no rank stand against 4 trained operatives to protect a small child who meant nothing to their empire. One agent moved to grab Naira, and in that moment, Liam reacted faster than they predicted. He swung the metal tool, knocking the agent aside. Shock flashed through the room. This was not how the test was meant to go. The agents had planned for resistance, but not full defiance from a single human. Naira screamed as another agent reached for her, and Liam pushed forward again, blocking their advance. He shouted that they were scaring her, that she had suffered enough, that she needed help, not force. The agents stepped back, confused. They were not allowed to harm the human, they were not allowed to harm the girl, yet the human refused to let them finish their mission. The test was collapsing. Then everything changed when Naira fell to her knees. She coughed, violently gripping her chest. Her breaths came short and sharp, as if her lungs were collapsing from the smoke damage she had taken during the fire. Her skin dimmed, her eyes flickered, her body shaking uncontrollably. The agents froze. This was not part of the test. Naira was dying. Liam dropped to her side, lifting her gently and calling her name, trying to keep her awake. Her head fell against his shoulder. Her breaths turned weak. He begged the agents for help, shouting that she needed medical care. Immediately, the agents looked at each other, unsure, unable to break the rules they were given. Liam stood up, carrying Naira in his arms, and ran for the door, stepping past the agents with powerful strides driven by fear and determination. Outside, he shouted for a human medic. Neighbors rushed from their homes, shocked by the sight of the trembling girl in his arms. The agents followed slowly, overwhelmed by a mistake they never intended. They had pushed the girl too far. They had pushed the human too far. Now, everything was being recorded and transmitted to the Empire. Millions would soon watch the footage of a human fighting for a dying alien child as Naira's breathing faded. Liam held her closer, refusing to let her go, refusing to let her drift into darkness. He swore that she would not die, not while he was still breathing far away. The Emperor watched the chaotic broadcast. A single sentence escaped his lips as he stared at the screen. This human has shaken fate. The human colony did not sleep. That night lights filled every queue, filled every queue. Every window as people gathered around Liam, who carried Naira in his arms, racing toward the center Of town, her skin flickered with a dim light, a sign of failing strength, and her breaths came in shallow, trembling waves. Liam refused to stop, refused to rest, refused to let her slip away after everything she endured. Human medics rushed to help the moment he reached the entrance. They gently lifted Naira from his arms, placing her on a diagnostic bed while machines scanned her weak body. Her lungs were damaged, her blood lacked stability, and her temperature dropped dangerously low. The medics acted quickly, guiding tubes and healing fields across her chest, while Liam stood beside her, refusing to step away. Meanwhile, the agents who had attempted to take her watched from the doorway, unsure how to explain their failure. They had tested the human and lost control. They had nearly killed the child and broken the rules of the council. The broadcast of Nira's collapse spread through the empire before they could stop it, and millions saw the truth. A human fought harder for a worthless child than her own people ever had inside the Emperor's throne room. High commanders stood silent as he watched the footage replay again and again, each time Liam shielded the girl. With his body, the Emperor's face tightened. Empires ruled through fear, through power, through cold logic. Yet here was a human who stood against agents without weapons, without armor, without hesitation. This was not weakness. This was strength that frightened rulers who never understood compassion. Back on the colony, Nira's condition stabilized slightly. Her breathing grew steadier. Though she remained unconscious, Liam sat beside her, holding her small hand, whispering that she was safe, that she was not alone, that he would stay as long as she needed. The room remained quiet, except for the soft hum of machines and the distant murmur of worried colonists outside. Just after sunrise, a delegation of alien envoys arrived at the medical station. Their robes shimmered with imperial symbols, and their posture carried the weight of authority. They demanded an audience with Liam. He stepped outside. Tired but unshaken, the lead envoy spoke sharply, stating that Naira must be handed over immediately, that she belonged to the Empire and not to a human colony. Liam asked a simple question. Why now? Why only after she was dying did they come for her? The envoys hesitated, unable to give a clear answer. They claimed it was protocol. They claimed it was their responsibility. They claimed the human colony had no right to interfere. Liam took a deep breath, and then he spoke, not with anger, but with truth that cut deeper than any weapon. He said that a child is not a piece of property. He said that a life is not measured by status or bloodline. He said that if the Empire refused to protect its own children, then humanity would. His voice carried across the crowd, and every device nearby transmitted his words into the open channels of multiple empires. The galaxy reacted instantly. Across distant planets, oppressed citizens replayed his declaration. Some cried, hearing a human stand for a forgotten child. Some rioted, demanding change. Some whispered that humans possessed a courage their own rulers lacked. Alien leaders felt their control slipping. They gathered in secret halls, arguing furiously. Some demanded the child be taken by force. Some warned that attacking a human colony would unite Earth in retaliation. Some feared the political firestorm, already spreading faster than they could contain. Back at the colony, Naira slowly opened her eyes, her gaze wandering until she found Liam sitting beside her. She reached out weakly, and he took her hand with a gentle smile. She whispered that she heard his voice even in her dreams, telling her to stay alive. Liam felt relief wash through him like a wave, and he promised again that she would never be abandoned while he lived. But outside the medical station, something darker formed. Imperial warships shifted positions in nearby space, their lights pulsing with readiness. Messages flowed between rival empires as alliances wavered. What began with one human rescuing one child now threatened to reshape the galaxy itself. And though Liam knew none of this, yet he felt a chill as he looked out through the window. He sensed that the fight for Naira had only just begun. He did not know that the next decision made by the empires would turn the Alflay, would turn the center of the greatest conflict in generations. The next morning began with a sky that did not look like a sky at all. Dozens of massive shadows drifted above the colony, blocking sunlight and sending long, dark shapes across every building and road. People stepped outside in fear as the ground vibrated under their feet. Children cried, adults whispered, and soldiers rushed to defensive posts. As the truth became clear, war fleets had arrived. 3 powerful empires stood united for the first time in hundreds of years, and their ships hovered high above. Arden 5 like iron mountains, ready to crush the tiny settlement below. Their demand was simple: return the alien girl or face consequences beyond imagination. Their message echoed across every comms device: no negotiation, no delay, surrender the girl. Inside the medical station, Naira sat up slowly, still weak, but awake enough to understand that something terrible waited outside. She looked at Liam with wide, frightened eyes. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder, telling her she was safe, telling her he would not allow anyone to take her, yet even he could feel the pressure of the fleets above pressing down like a giant weight. Human forces gathered quickly, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. Small defensive ships rose from the colony hangars, forming a thin line against the vast armada in the sky. The alien warships activated their weapons, glowing with deadly blue light. Every colonist felt the tremor of fear travel through their bones as they watched the impossible standoff unfold. The alien envoys returned, demanding again that Liam surrender Naira. Now they warned that the fleets would fire if their order was ignored, that the colony would be destroyed in minutes. Liam stared at them with calm defiance. He asked why these empires cared now when they never cared before. He asked why they valued power but not a child. They had no answer, only threats. Suddenly, Naira slid off her bed, holding Liam's hand for balance. She stepped forward and faced the envoys. Her voice trembled, but her words struck like lightning. She begged them not to hurt the humans. She told them these people cared for her when her own empire did not. She told them she did not want to return. She wanted to stay with the man who saved her life. Her plea was recorded by every camera in the room and transmitted across the galaxy. Soldiers aboard the alien fleets watched the scene in silence. They were trained to obey. They were taught to see worth only in strength. But seeing a child beg for mercy for her protectors made something inside them break. In several ships, crew members lowered their weapons without orders. Some argued with their commanders. Some refused to fire. Some walked off battle stations, refusing to harm a human who protected a child better than their empires ever had. The alliance began to fracture. Commanders shouted orders while officers questioned them. Discipline collapsed as morality awakened in the hearts of countless soldiers, but not all of them. One imperial commander, known for his cruelty and hunger for power, stepped forward. He saw the hesitation of his troops and ordered the primary cannon to fire directly at the colony. He believed fear must be restored. He believed no human should defy an empire and live. A bright beam began to charge inside the largest warship. The air around Arden 5 vibrated with violent energy. People screamed and ran, while others held their loved ones tight. The colony braced itself for destruction. Inside the medical station, alarms blared. Liam grabbed Naira, shielding her with his arms. Once again, he whispered that everything would be all right, even though he was not sure. Naira pressed her forehead against his chest, terrified but trusting him completely. The cannon reached full charge. The sky glowed white. Every heart on the colony stopped in dread, but before the commander could fire, a sudden explosion erupted from within his own warship Rebel. Soldiers inside the ship had destroyed the firing controls, refusing to murder innocent people. They turned their weapons on their own. Commander, declaring him unfit to lead the cannon, collapsed in a burst of light, sending debris across the empty space. Shockwaves rippled through the fleet. One by one, ships shut down their weapons. Some turned and kneeled in space, a gesture of surrender in their military tradition. Others broadcast a message across all channels: we will not harm those who defend our children better than we do. Down on the colony, everyone stared upward in disbelief. The sky that moments ago promised death now shimmered with silence. Naira held Liam's hand tightly, her voice soft as she asked what would happen next. Liam looked at the kneeling fleets, unsure of the answer, but deep in his heart he felt that the galaxy had changed, and the change had begun with a single act of kindness. The sky above Arden 5 looked unreal as the rebel ships drifted into formation, each of them dimming their weapons and lowering their thrusters in a gesture of surrender. A strange quiet spread across the colony, as if the entire world held its breath waiting to understand what had just happened. Only minutes earlier, every person believed they would die under the blast of a planetary cannon. Now half the armada knelt in space, honoring a human who protected a child no one knew how to react. Inside the medical station, Nira sat pressed against Liam's chest, trying to steady her breathing. She could still feel the echo of fear inside her bones, but the sight of the kneeling fleets filled her with something new. Hope, a feeling she had never known living in an empire that saw her as worthless. She looked up at Liam and whispered that people in the sky were bowing. Liam barely understood it himself. Outside crowds gathered, pointing at the silent Titan ships above. Some colonists cried, some laughed in disbelief, and some simply stood frozen, staring at the moment that defied everything they had ever known about alien empires. Human soldiers lowered their weapons, confused, yet relieved. Human commanders sent messages to Earth, reporting what had happened. Every message carried the same stunned conclusion: the galaxy was changing. In the command ship of the kneeling fleet, a rebel officer ordered a full broadcast. His voice echoed across thousands of screens and speakers. On dozens of planets, he declared that their empire had failed to protect the innocent. He declared that a human mechanic had shown greater honor than their rulers. He declared that kneeling was the only rightful response to such courage. Other ships followed, repeating the gesture. Weapons powered down, shields dropped, engines dimmed. A ring of kneeling warships encircled the colony like guardians instead of conquerors. Their lights flickered in a peaceful rhythm, sending a message without words: respect, acknowledgement, a silent promise. But not every commander accepted the rebellion. Some ships remained tense, ignoring the symbolic kneel. They still believed in the old order. They still believed fear was power. One of them activated a hidden secondary cannon inside the hull, aiming directly for the medical station where Liam and Nira stood. Nira sensed danger before Liam did. Her small hand tightened around his arm. She whispered that something bad was about to happen before Liam could respond. A blinding flash erupted from the hostile warship. A concentrated bolt of energy shot toward the colony, traveling at impossible speed. Liam acted without thinking. He grabbed Nira, pulled her close, and threw himself around her body, shielding her with his whole form. The blast struck the ground only meters away. The shockwave exploded outward, knocking Liam off his feet and sending everyone crashing to the floor. Glass shattered, buildings shook, and dust filled the air in a violent cloud. More rebel soldiers rose against the hostile commander. As soon as they saw the attack, they stormed the command deck, overpowering him in seconds. But the damage done on the colony was already spreading fear again. Nira crawled toward Liam, terrified he was hurt. He lifted his head slowly and smiled weakly to show he was alive. She wrapped her arms around him, trembled, and whispered that she thought she lost him. Liam held her close, promising she would never lose him as long as he breathed. The rebels transmitted their final declaration to every empire. They said no child deserved to face death because of political power. They said any empire that allowed such cruelty no longer deserved loyalty. They said allegiance now belonged to those who protected children, no matter their species. Then something extraordinary happened. More fleets from distant regions began to kneel, ships belonging to rival empires, ships belonging to fallen kingdoms, ships belonging to neutral systems. One by one, they lowered their engines and bowed toward the human colony. On 1,000 world citizens watched the broadcast in awe. They saw a small alien child standing beside a human protector. They saw warships kneeling in unity. They saw a galaxy breaking free from cruelty. All because one human stepped into fire for someone everyone else had forgotten. Naira looked out the window as the sky glowed with kneeling ships. Her voice shook as she asked why they were bowing. Liam answered softly, "Because you matter, because every child matters, because they finally understand what they forgot long ago." Naira touched her chest, feeling warmth she never knew before. For the first time she believed she had value, not because of a title, not because of blood, but because someone chose to protect her simply because she existed. As more ships knelt, the galaxy shifted into a new balance. The old order cracked, the new era began. And at the center of it all stood a human mechanic, and the little girl he refused to abandon. The sun rose over Arden 5. With a soft golden light reflecting on the countless warships kneeling silently in the sky, the people of the colony stepped outside with awe, in their eyes unable to believe they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered for generations. A single child, once abandoned, once dismissed, once labeled worthless, had become the reason entire empires bent their knees. And beside her stood a human mechanic whose courage had reshaped the destiny of stars. Inside the medical station, Naira woke slowly, feeling warmth instead of fear, hearing calm voices instead of alarms. She looked around and saw Liam sitting near her bed, his hands resting on his knees, his gaze gentle as always. She whispered his name, and he leaned closer, relieved to see her awake again. She told him she dreamed of fire and falling buildings, but also of hands pulling her out of darkness, of someone choosing her, someone refusing to let her die. Liam told her the dream was real, and so was the world waiting outside. Naira stood with his help, and together they walked out of the station into the open morning air. People gathered around them, cheering softly, afraid to frighten the girl, but wanting her to know she was safe. Naira looked up and saw the great ships floating above in peaceful silence. She asked why so many powerful vessels were kneeling. Liam answered that sometimes even the strongest must bow to what is right. The colony governor approached with officials from Earth, who had arrived during the night. They spoke respectfully to Naira, not as a piece of property, not as a burden, but as someone important. They explained that Earth had taken guardianship of her until she chose her own future. They explained that humanity would defend her and others like her. Naira listened with wide eyes, still trying to understand how one act of kindness had changed so much. Across the galaxy, screens displayed her image. Millions of beings watched the small alien child who had become a symbol of hope. Rebellions stirred, old empires weakened. Voices rose, demanding justice and compassion. A movement had begun, and Naira was at its center without ever meaning to be. Meanwhile, within one of the rebel fleets, a council of commanders gathered. They discussed the fall of their former leaders and the rise of new values. They agreed to form a new alliance, built not on fear but on protection. They wanted Earth and its people to guide the new way forward. They believed humanity held something their empires had forgotten: heart. But even in this new age, dangers remained. Some old lords of distant systems refused to kneel. Some plotted revenge. Some whispered that Naira must disappear for the galaxy to return to its former order. Rumors of secret threats spread like shadows across star maps. Liam knew this. He knew peace was not permanent. He knew Naira would face challenges simply for being alive. But he also knew she was no longer alone. Earth stood with her, rebel fleets stood with her, and he would stand with her for as long as he breathed. Later that afternoon, Naira and Liam walked to the ridge overlooking the colony. Wind brushed over her hair as she stared at the sky. She said she did not understand why she mattered so much. Liam knelt beside her and told her a simple truth. A life has value, not because a ruler says so, but because it exists. Naira placed her small hand on his chest, feeling his heart beat steady and strong. She whispered that she wanted to stay with him, not because she was afraid, but because she felt safe for the first time in her life. He smiled and told her she already had a place with him as long as she wished. She was family, now not by blood, but by choice. As twilight fell, the kneeling fleets lit their engines in a gentle glow, painting the sky with colors never seen before. It was a promise. Reminder. A beginning. Naira stood taller as she watched the light. Something inside her shifted. She no longer felt like the abandoned child in a burning tower. She felt like someone who carried the hopes of many worlds, not because she wanted power, but because her survival had shown the galaxy what true strength looked like. Liam placed a hand on her shoulder. He told her the galaxy would need leaders who understood pain and compassion. He told her she could become one if she chose. Nira looked up at him, then at the endless stars. For the first time, she believed she had a future. For the first time, she believed she had worth. Together they watched the sky as the new alliance signaled its unity. A new era dawned, born not from war, but from one human choosing to save a forgotten child. And Nira whispered softly that she would never forget the man who pulled her from the fire and gave her a life worth living.